I'm Emily Miller. In this video, I'll give you all the latest on these criminal charges and what's next for Baldwin. It's a stunning announcement that almost no one saw coming. You can read a lot more detail in my Substack. It's emilypostnews.com. I'll put the link below. Also, if you want a background on the criminal charges and Baldwin saying he's never getting charged and the reasons why, I have a video that you may have missed a couple months ago on the 5 facts you need to know about the criminal charges. So I'll put that in the link below as well. Baldwin killed Halyna Hutchins. She was the cinematographer on the movie Rust, which was shot in New Mexico. And she was a very talented and experienced cinematographer. She's also was a wife, and mother of a young son. The district attorney in Santa Fe, who put out the statement today about the charges, said, "No one is above the law, and everyone deserves justice." It's just a shocking revelation because everyone thought this movie star, Alec Baldwin, who's been in movies for 40 years, extremely wealthy and powerful and very popular in Hollywood, would just get off scot-free, and that's not what's happening. The prosecutor said she's going to file these charges against Baldwin by the end of the month. He will then have to appear before the judge, make his plea, and ask for bail. It can be done virtually, she said. So then it will go to a jury trial.
All options are on the table at this point. I'm not commenting on charges, whether they will be filed or not, or on whom. So the answer is we cannot answer that question yet until we complete a more thorough investigation.
In New Mexico, involuntary manslaughter is a 4th-degree felony. So the most possible charge that Baldwin could get is 18 months in jail and $5,000 fine. And Baldwin's lawyer said they're not taking a plea deal. They are going to fight this. So that means there will be a jury trial in New Mexico with Alec Baldwin. Well, Baldwin's lawyer, Luke Nikas, put out a statement today and it said this: "The decision distorts Halyna Hutchins' tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. He relied on the professionals," those are his employees because he was a producer on the film. "He relied on the professionals with whom he worked, with whom he employed, who assured him the gun did not have live rounds. We will fight these charges and we will win." So that's why we know that it's going to go to trial, it's going to go to jury trial. And the DA is coming out really strong. And as you've been following my reporting all along, again, emilypostnews.com, I have a whole section just on Alec Baldwin's criminal legal issues. The DA has seemed sympathetic to him, and she has never mentioned anything about gun safety. In fact, she did a reenactment of shooting a revolver to see if it could be shot without pulling the trigger, which Baldwin claimed he didn't pull the trigger repeatedly, still says that, but the FBI forensics report came back and said he did pull the trigger. So take it for what it's worth. Now, amazing, someone got to her because she really knows what she's talking about. She was on CNN today and she said every person that handles a gun has a duty to make sure that if they're going to handle that gun, point it at someone and pull the trigger that is not going to fire a projectile and kill someone. This is the district attorney who seemed to be pretty liberal and seems to know nothing about guns up to now in all her interviews. She said, this is really powerful, "An actor does not get a free pass just because they are an actor." That is what is so important. We are saying here in New Mexico that everyone is equal under the law. And that's why this has been so shocking, as most people who have been following this case have just assumed he's going to get away with it and he's not going to get charged because he's a movie star and he's super rich and been famous for 40 years. So the DA is saying absolutely not. You're not an actor. You don't get to get away with absolutely not following any gun control, any gun safety rules, and get away with it. Just so we're clear, gun safety, there's 3 rules for those of us who own guns, and they cross each other. So if you miss one, another one catches you. So the point is to not shoot yourself or anyone else accidentally. And they work great. The 3 are not point the loaded gun in an unsafe direction, meaning in this case, Baldwin pointed it at Halyna Hutchins and also his director. And his defense of that is that she told him to point it at her. He's blaming his victim. The second rule is to assume the gun is loaded. So you always check. If someone hands you a gun, you always check. And I've said this before, I've said it again. I've been in a photo shoot, I've been on TV showing people how to shoot guns. People hand me on set guns. They say they're unloaded. I don't care who they are. I check the gun. And I've interviewed a bunch of actors. They don't want their names used, but they all say they always check their own guns, even if the armorer hands it to them. George Clooney came out and said in a podcast that he always checks his own gun. So this is not unheard of in Hollywood. This is the norm in Hollywood. And Baldwin just says, my employee is responsible for it.
Stated on the record.
You're not worried about being charged?
I've been told by people who are in the know in terms of even inside the state that it's highly unlikely I would be charged with anything criminally.
The third rule for gun safety is to never put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. That's to ensure you don't trip, or in Alec Baldwin's case, he pulled back the hammer, and because he was doing a cross draw, which is a very difficult thing to do, I have trouble doing it, because you have to get across your body, get into a holster, and not grab the trigger, which is natural because your fingers go down. He was pulled back the hammer, which is the back, which releases it, and then because his finger is on the trigger, which was the rule never to do, and he didn't follow any of the other two gun safety rules, he then pulled the trigger out, looked right at the camera, pulled the trigger, probably doesn't remember doing it, is why he keeps claiming he didn't, but the FBI has said he did, and he shot Halyna Hutchins, and then the bullet went through her, fortunately, into the director behind her. And I wanted to say something that gets sort of lost in this story about Alec Baldwin is Halyna Hutchins was on the floor of this small church they were shooting in Santa Fe for 25 minutes with the other crew holding her wounds, trying to stop the bleeding from the front and the back. She could barely speak. They were whispering in her ear, stay with us, you know. They were whispering in Russian because she was Ukrainian, so she could understand. I mean, they were trying, I mean, I'm sure they're extremely traumatized as they tried to save her life. Alec Baldwin, in any of the materials, is in that scene. I mean, he shot her, and there's zero accounting of him being there, checking on her, asking if she's okay, asking anyone if she's okay, asking what's happened. He just left, walked out. 25 minutes he had to consider this decision, and he just walked out. Now, the district attorney also announced 2 other people are being charged on the set. So Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was the armorer. And you remember from the very beginning of the story, Baldwin completely threw her under the bus and said it's all her fault because she handed me a gun with a live round in it. She's being charged with involuntary manslaughter. Her lawyer came out today, that's Jason Bowles, and said flat that Hannah did not commit involuntary manslaughter. He also said he expects Hannah will be exonerated of all wrongdoing by the jury. And then there's a third charge the DA did. Dave Halls was the assistant director. He's the one who actually handed the gun to Baldwin because Hannah was not allowed in the scene in the church because of COVID restrictions. So she handed the gun to Dave Halls. Dave Halls said clean gun or clear gun and gave it to Baldwin. So he took a plea deal. He's getting suspended sentence, and there's thought that he's doing that and he's going to testify against the other 2 for himself. But that also came out today. And we know this is going to be a jury trial because, as I reported back in September, the district attorney requested from the state more funding, I think $635,000 of extra funding, and because of this Baldwin case, that she was going to charge at least 4 people and have a jury trial for them. And she mentioned Alec Baldwin. So we knew this was coming and they have the funding. That's how we know this is going forward in that direction. Now, one more thing about Baldwin's insistence that he had nothing to do with this, and it's not his fault at all, and takes no responsibility, is Hannah Reed, the armorer, is shown texting, and this is in the sheriff's report, texting her boss and asking if she could train more with Alec Baldwin because she had trained somewhat about a week earlier, and she wanted to train him specifically on the cross draw, which I told you is a very complicated thing to do. And she asked, and she was refused. So she did all she could do. Yeah, she loaded a live round. She's acknowledged that she loaded a live round. We don't know exactly how that live round got on the set. It obviously shouldn't be there. It's all supposed to be dummies or blanks, but she did load it. Did it look like a blank? Was it marked like a dummy? I mean, it could look like a blank. It could be marked that way. We'll find that out more as all the materials are released by the DA, which should be in the next coming weeks. Now, as I reported a few months ago, Matthew Hutchins, that's Halyna's husband and father of her son, had a civil lawsuit against Baldwin, and he settled it a few months ago. And to outsiders, it appeared that he just sort of forgave Baldwin because it didn't mention anything about money, though it could be in there, and they didn't mention it. But they said that they're having complete confidentiality and that he was going to executive produce this film to get finished, this Rust movie. So he would be the executive producer, Baldwin would be the actor, maybe producer. It seems so odd, the man who shot and killed your wife. And Matthew Hutchins has been so angry. One interview he did was just how he was seething angry over Baldwin claiming no responsibility and saying he didn't feel guilty, saying he wasn't sorry. So it did seem strange. And a lawyer who's close to this case told me a few months ago that the reason for that settlement could be because there was some bigger deal coming, big deal plea, and that Matthew Hutchins very well could have been talking to the district attorney about the settlement, saying, this is how I will make me whole, is if we get criminal charges against him, serious criminal charges, and then the civil stuff doesn't really matter, I will have this agreement with him, so we'll drop the civil suit. That possibly happened now that we see what the charges are. They're so high charges. I mean, this is not a lower level gun charge, although there is one as well. There's a top charge, that's a felony, 4th degree, but still. No one saw this coming. It would make sense, and this is just based on my lawyer sources, that this was a deal between the prosecutor and Matthew Hutchins, so what he needed to go on with his life and find justice for the death of his wife. So now we know, and it's really, truly a shocking announcement, that that justice is blind, first of all, and Alec Baldwin is being charged at least as much as his employees. Now, his employees did not point a loaded gun at Halyna Hutchins and pull the trigger. However, everyone expected that this would go in a completely different direction. So it's up to a New Mexico jury now. They will decide, regular people will decide, if Alec Baldwin has the same level of blame in this and responsibility in this as the armorer or as anyone, and whether he's found guilty or not. You know, I'll be following every step of the way. This is Emily Miller. If you like this video, just hit the like button. And you can always follow me on Twitter at Emily Miller and on my Substack at emilypostnews.com. See you soon.